Welcome back to the Unanimous Decision Podcast. I am your host, DPalm. Follow me on Twitter at DPalm66. Follow the show on Twitter at UDPod. Follow the entire MTR Network at the MTR Network. Thank you to anyone who's ever downloaded, subscribed, streamed any of our episodes, and especially those of you who've checked out our brand new interview series, Dope Talk. It's a way for me to let you guys into my world and meet people who've been in my life for a while and hear some of the things that make them tick and things that I think are interesting. And episode 3 is recorded. It's in the can. I'm very happy with it, and I can't wait to get it to you guys. In the next couple weeks, you'll be getting it probably the second week of March. But we're here today to talk about sports, UDPod. You found us, don't lose us. Make sure you subscribe in the iTunes Store, anywhere you get your podcasts for absolutely free. And once you subscribe, make your voice heard. Leave that 5-star review, and it'll be right on the air. Why 5 stars? Well, because honestly, it helps the show. It lets us know not only people are listening, but that they have opinions and things they want to share. Also, it lets us tell people who may want to, advertise on our network that people are not only listening, but they're engaged. And it takes about 10 seconds for you, and it's a huge help for us. And we're going to go right now and see if there's any. We've had trouble, like I said before, about the ratings coming through. Please keep leaving them. I may get them late. We've got no new ones this week. If you've left one and I haven't read it yet, I'm not ignoring you. I'm not forgetting about you. It just hasn't populated yet. We're going to find a better way to catch and make sure we get all the reviews as we move forward. That's all I've got in the way of promo. We've got our guest today, best man at my wedding, good friend. I don't think you've been on since I got married, have you?
I have not.
The homie Mike is here. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing pretty well. Thanks for having me back.
Well, thanks you for coming. I had dinner with our good friends Wright and Keenan last night, and I told them you're going to be on the show, and one of them said, "Oh, so you're not talking about sports?" I'm not going to point any fingers, but it was definitely one of the two of them said that.
I know who said it, and they will be talked to.
Fair enough. So before we get into the events of the week, I do want to ask you, you were able to make it up to NegroCon 1.5, the mixtape, in DC for the Black Panthers viewing. How was it?
It was amazing. The movie was great. It's great on a second viewing. It was great to be with, a bunch of comic book nerds, and we had the theater to ourselves, so it was fun.
That's super dope, man. I'm jealous. I had a good time at my wedding, but man, it seems like it was a great experience looking at all the pictures and all the reports coming out of there.
Yeah, I'm glad whoever came up with the idea did and pulled the trigger on it very quickly. I think we were pretty early on the whole buying theaters out for Black Panther, so yeah.
We're some trendsetters. Like I told you guys a year ago on these airwaves, Black Panther was going to do $1 billion. And as we sit 10 days in and $500 million made, I feel comfortable saying, I told you so.
I think it was $500 million after a week.
Yeah, it's getting creepy. It's getting to the point where, everyone's got to recalibrate everything on what we think a movie can actually do.
And I still have a lot of friends that haven't seen it.
I've only seen it
once. And I've been yelling at them. Oh.
You sounded so disgusted. Wait a second. Hold on. I've only seen it once because like I said, I recorded a podcast every day this past week. It's always after work. And I was traveling the weekend before. I'm glad I got to see it before I got on that plane to New York.
Look, Chris is a busy guy, and he's seen it at least 3 times, as far as I know. So, I don't know.
One of those was free because he's a reviewer, and we hate him for that.
I'm just hearing excuses.
Last episode we had, full UDPod, was with Kanata Edwards, who writes for Uprocks. And for those of you who remember some of our conversation, he spoke about following and shadowing a NASCAR driver for a piece for Uprocks. His name is Bubba Wallace, and yes, he's black, and his name's Bubba Wallace. Well, for what we thought was going to be a cool piece, it actually turned out to be something much more important because Bubba Wallace finished second at Daytona. And so the article changed from a profile of this up-and-coming driver to the title being Daytona 500 runner-up. Bubba Wallace needed one chance to show what he can do by Kanata Edwards, friend of the show. Just want to give him a big shout-out. The link is in the show notes. And I bet you didn't think we'd start talking about NASCAR, did you?
No, and my knowledge gap on NASCAR is pretty big, so he's young. He's what, 24?
Yeah, man. So the way it happened was he was discovered by Wendell Scott Jr., whose father, Wendell Scott, was the only full-time black driver in NASCAR ever. NASCAR asked if younger Scott would go scout Wallace, Scott didn't tell him he was going to be there. He watched the race, saw the kid handle himself, and he made a point to get Wallace. Wallace made a point to get involved in the Drive for Diversity program that NASCAR had. He was too young to enter, but they found a way to get him in because he was that good. And so that's it's kind of like a very great story, guys. I invite you to follow the link, go to Uprocks, get Ken out of some quicks, man. And friend of the show. It's not a he win situation, it's a we win situation. And that's just how I feel about it. I always have and always will. Let's talk about some other things in sports that I know your knowledge gap isn't quite as big on. We have now been through, for my money, the only All-Star game worth discussing in sports. Shout out, hat tip to the NHL All-Star game. It's just the NHL and no one really watches. The NBA did it again. Last year's was, at best, I can be described as lackluster. This year felt like a good competitive game that ended not on some big three or big dunk, but ended on Kevin Durant and LeBron James trapping Steph Curry on the baseline.
I mean, if you watch the last, 3-4 minutes of that game, when they actually start to put that defense on,
it reminds
Curry can get away from, anybody, but KD and LeBron, nah.
It reminds you that if indeed the aliens do show up and they demand us to play a 2-on-2 tournament, we've got KD and LeBron and we're going to be fine.
Yeah, I think we do all right.
And if you were to tell me that these two are actually Saiyans from another planet, basketball Saiyans who've been launched here, if they're basically Goku, and you say that they're aliens, that's why they're so good, I'd be like, I accept that. That makes sense.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue.
No. So the All-Star game was great. Did you watch any more of the weekend? I was really, just as I was traveling, just really caught the game itself on Sunday, and really just the back half of that. Did you catch a dunk contest or anything?
I caught bits and pieces throughout the weekend, saw a little bit of the celebrity game, Quavo, MVP, Atlanta. Saw a little bit of the dunk contest, but I don't know. They need to do something with the dunk contest. I haven't been
every year. I think last year's dunk contest was fun. I think it all goes back to when we were in college and Andre Iguodala was robbed. I really do.
Robbed by who?
I don't want to talk about
it. You mean multiple-time dunk champion Nate Robinson?
Let's move on. Yeah, that's one of my buttons for listeners of the podcast who don't know about that one. It's one of the buttons. It's ridiculous. All right, we got to talk about it. Because the way my secondhand embarrassment is set up, I haven't watched the video ever, but I've heard clips. What was Fergie doing?
Okay, so I was avoiding the video, and then I listened to a podcast where they talked about this, and they played her singing. My God. She doesn't have good friends. Someone would have told her this is not a good idea.
So
I mean, she had
videos of her
rehearsal.
There are videos from rehearsal where she looks unsure about her rendition.
Well, she should have trusted her instincts.
Someone said, no, you got this. Someone told her to push through those feelings.
Look, we can't all be Marvin or Whitney. Just do a nice standard national anthem. Cool, get out of there. You can't reinvent the thing.
I've seen a lot of people try to take well, at least you tried something lane. No. That's wrong.
No.
That's a lie.
You don't get a participation trophy. I'm sorry. You got to do better.
And it was barely participation. It felt like, not that she phoned it in, but I'm embarrassed for her. This is really bad. Not to say that Fergie was the hottest thing in the streets, but can you really go out in public now?
She'll be fine.
I mean,
but have you seen the gifs of player reactions while she's singing?
And that's why I'm this is going to be a bit more embarrassing than when things happened in the past, because gifs are forever. And we all got time hop now, so in a year, remember this last year? We roasted Fergie. That's going to happen. The anniversary of the Fergie roast is going to occur. That's just kind of how the way the internet works now. She's got to lean into it. She's got to release an entire album of her covering national anthems from around the world in a throaty, not very entertaining manner. I would love to hear the 27-minute version of "Oh Canada."
Yeah, she needs to go to Raptors game and knock that out.
Infect them as well. If we suffer, everyone suffers. The Cold War continues. So this year, they picked the teams on a conference call a couple weeks early. We got to see people be mistakenly upset, hi Russell Westbrook, and take it out on the court. I'm always a huge fan of All-Star snub season, which is the day after the All-Stars are announced. You get to reach who didn't get picked, and you get to see them go on tears. But then this is allowing us a chance for a second snub, because if they start picking these teams, as I say, next year, this just got to be live, right? Like, Silver sounds like he's like, I get it. We're going live next year. I think that's where we're headed, right?
It's got to be live, and it has to be same day. People are going to tune in and be interested. Yeah, day of. I don't want ahead of time. I don't want people dissecting the teams. No, I want same day.
Okay, so
I want immediate, like, Westbrook anger because he thought he was snubs. You know, I want that in the game.
Okay, so counterpoint. All-Star subseason is my favorite period of time in basketball. By picking it before the game itself, I get a secondary snub season.
Yeah, I'm good with one snub season and then them taking out the secondary snub in the game immediately. I don't want them to marinate on it. I want them to have, like, raw emotion and then go out and, you know, be angry play.
All right. I mean, look, I'm as long as it's televised, I'd put it behind a pay-per-view wall. I'd be like, you have to log it, or at least make you log into NBA.com to watch. I'd make it streaming so that we can collect your email address. Like, I'm sorry. Yeah. There's no way I'm just getting into television. I'm going to leverage this shit on this.
We're going to do, like, an awkward green room, like the draft or something.
God. And that's the other thing. Everyone's got to have a camera on them. If you're going to pick it live, everyone's got their own camera. Dedicated feed. Because when Russell figures out he's got to play with Kevin, I want to see those faces. I want to see the split screen.
Yeah, because they're not going to act or hide it, you know.
Okay, so one of your big, I don't know if you're a fan of this franchise, but I know you've annoyed me with them long enough. The San Antonio Spurs are known for being a class organization, probably the best run franchise in all of sports. But now we've got reports that Kawhi Leonard has been cleared by team doctors, but he doesn't think he's ready to play. And Popovich is talking about him not playing another minute this year. Is this trouble in the most boring paradise ever?
Okay, first of all, I am a huge fan. You should know this.
I just wanted to hear you defend your love of your doppelganger, Tim Duncan.
Yes, always. Timmy, greatest all time, GOAT, power forward.
Let's move forward.
Look, I think, Pop's statement was Pop's statement. It was factual. You know, he's just like, yeah, Kawhi probably not going to play the rest of the year. Pop wasn't, like, speaking out or, you know, kind of subtweeting Kawhi or anything. And Pop's great with the players, you know, with Aldridge, last year or whatever, Aldridge was going from demanding a trade to playing his best season with the Spurs or something like that. You know, I think it's front office. Also, you know, Kawhi's got to look out for himself. He's going to come back, maybe injure himself when he's got a contract up in, 2019, 2020? Yep. I mean,
but is this a player
I'm not worried.
Who doesn't trust the franchise? And I think that more than anything is a thing that, not worrying, but it's different for San Antonio.
Yeah, it's definitely different from San Antonio, but, you know, Kawhi came into his own under Pop. I mean, who really knew who Kawhi was until he had that big run when they won the championship?
Yeah.
I mean,
but a year ago, we're talking about this guy as probably one of the best two-way players in the league. They're having the Westbrook Kawhi Leonard debate for MVP, and now it feels like a lot of missed opportunity. And it also, and I love doing this because I know certain people who listen to this podcast don't agree. This further points the picture of LeBron James as the greatest of all time. He's never gotten hurt.
Yeah, I mean that's
he's never gotten hurt.
About being an alien or whatever. I mean, was he in season 14? He hasn't had a serious injury. I can't think of another.
Jordan lost a year.
Yeah, Jordan lost a year early.
Larry lost.
Everyone gets hurt.
Larry lost the end of his
Kobe
back.
had to go out to Europe to do whatever weird surgery that was. I mean, everyone gets hurt except LeBron. Apparently, he's super durable, and he's playing a lot of minutes.
Yeah, it's not like he's not taking
Controlling the ball,
like
yeah.
he is carrying these squads, especially now. And it just for one, I know people don't like me pivoting always to LeBron, but this just further highlights how great and weird he is.
True, but 1 year is not the worst. It just kind of depends on
Oh no, I'm not
if he
saying it's
loses a
over
step after.
I'm just saying that right now the injury's weird, the way it's being handled is weird, the way it's being reported on is weird, and it's something that I've never really seen out of San Antonio since we began this Tim Duncan, David Robinson run in the mid '90s.
Yeah, but I think you need to take it with a grain of salt also. I mean, of course they're going to report it this way because there hasn't been anything like this out of San Antonio forever. So any little thing where you can be like, all right, maybe there's an issue here, it's going to blow up a little bit. I think Pop and Kawhi's relationship will be fine. I don't really know what's going on with the organization. We'll see. Spurs are still doing well. Where are they? Third, three seed, something like that.
Which is amazing.
Like, how old is Tony Parker and Manu at this point? And they don't have their best player.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the question comes back is, even with Kawhi, are they better than the three, you think? Are they better than Houston or the Warriors?
I mean, they'll definitely make it more interesting. I mean, Kawhi is really good at defense. As a guard, I mean, come on. Put him on Harden. Let's go.
Oof, that's a tall order, but I think you might be right. Let's stay in the great state of Texas. Mark Cuban, we're talking about him twice now. This is the first one, and the one that we're gonna have fun with. The next one we're not, I promise. Mark Cuban was on Dr. J's podcast. First of all, Dr. J has a podcast. It's called
what?
No, I looked it up. It's called House Call with Dr. J, which is kind of catchy.
Yeah. Yeah.
A+ title, Dr. J. But yeah, I guess when you're Dr. J, you can have Mark Cuban on. And when you're Dr. J, you have Mark Cuban on, he can say things that, and preface them with, this is probably going to get me fined. And then he'll say them. What he said was, this is probably going to be fined. I'm probably not supposed to say this, but like, I just had dinner with a bunch of our guys the other night, and here we are, we weren't competing for the playoffs. I was like, look, losing is our best option. He then referred to Silver, saying, Adam would hate hearing that, but at least I sat down and explained to them. And I explained what our plans were going to be this summer, that we're not going to tank again. This is like a year and a half of tanking, and that's too brutal for me. But being transparent, I think that's key to kind of having a player's owner and having stability. Now, I think the fact that he got hit for $600,000 for this is hilarious.
Oh, yeah, it's
prior to this,
a little over the top.
The most fined owner of all time, having amassed over $2.6 million in fines, which I think is interesting.
Drop in the bucket for him. But
another 0.6. Here we go. But I got to ask, is it okay to fine him if you use the words the process, would it just be oblique enough? Like, is it because he said the word taking? Or is it because he's laying bare, like, this thing that we all kind of recognize that, yes, being worse is incentivized amongst these teams?
I mean, I think Silver probably took it a little bit of making the NBA look bad because this is the most viable option for them. Also, side note, I'm waiting for my Mark Cuban straight cash homie moment. It's got to happen at some point.
Oh, he's going to say some real disrespectful shit one of these days. And he said it before to Stern, but I think, he hasn't popped off the Silver yet, but eventually we're going to get the not on write checks. Like, what do you mean? How are you going to pay? How are you going to pay these guys?
Straight cash homie.
Get the camera and say straight cash homie, and I'm going to cheer my ass off. Actually, I totally need someone to ask Mikey. I need someone to make this happen. I don't care if it's staged. I don't give a damn. Give him the script. I just need it to occur. It doesn't have to be naturally occurring. I'm not that selfish or greedy. I do need it to happen though. Oh man, you just made my life. I'm officially a sad person until it actually occurs. $600,000, like you said, a drop in the bucket. This isn't tampering. This is acknowledging a reality that largely we've all acknowledged. We all get it. We all know that, yeah, this is something that happened. Yeah. This is something that.
This is a fact.
This is how the Sixers happened. This is how Hinkie had his job for as long as he did. Trust the process. Yeah. The process was tanking. They just didn't call it tanking.
Euphemisms work.
Sometimes they don't, because Mark Cuban tried to handle another piece of business this week with a bunch of them, and I can say it's for you and me, not good enough. So for those of you who don't know about the story, first of all, weird. Second of all, the Dallas Mavericks were hit with a whale of a Yahoo story. The Yahoo story outlined a culture in which sexual harassment and sexual misconduct were tolerated and sometimes rewarded. It speaks to a former CEO of the team and team president who, for years, who had come under fire for this action under the previous owners.
Investigated, not just come under fire.
Right, you're right. Investigated under the previous owners of the Mavericks. He maintained his position, was even promoted once Mark Cuban took over, and in some circles for years was touted as a potential commissioner of the NBA. So while we're going to talk specifically in the next few minutes about the culture in the Dallas Mavericks organization, keep in mind that this man was well regarded enough to be considered to be an heir apparent to David Stern at one point. That's how good of his reputation was, even with the public investigation of his actions. The second, somewhat, I'm not going to rank them in more or less damning, but
good.
It's a stark. It's a beat writer for Mavs.com was arrested for beating a woman, and then arrested for dating and striking a coworker. The Mavs made him sign a pledge that he would no longer date coworkers.
Not that he would no longer abuse them.
Nope. He would no longer date them. I'm going to remind everyone about some things before we go forward. Mark Cuban, when they decided to take Donald Sterling's franchise away from him, was one of the many voices in the NBA, actually a few voices, I'll be honest, one of the few voices, that's why it stood out, to say, let's not act too harshly or too rashly. We don't want to be taking teams away from people so quickly. Almost like he knew something in his own home didn't smell great.
How long ago was Sterling? That was a while ago, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, it was a while ago. I was a dude you crazy. And secondly, he said in 2014 about the NFL's demise, I'm just telling you, pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered, and they're getting hoggy. When you take it too far, people turn the other way. I'm just telling you, you've got a good thing and you get greedy. It's always, always, always turns on you. That's number one rule in business. They're getting disrupted in their own hand by not dealing with certain issues. Hey, Mark. Chickens roost? I think that's the old adage. So you've read this. You've read Jamel Hill's wonderful take on the Undefeated. You've read the Yahoo report. I don't know if you've heard some of the radio interviews, but these reporters for Yahoo said, first of all, it took forever to get this out because people high up did not want this story told. And two, that the things that they could not, that were removed from the piece are worse than the stuff that's in.
Well, that's disconcerting.
Quite. What's your takeaway from all this? Because let's remember, Mark Cuban just got $600,000 for using the T word.
I mean, it's just ridiculous on so many levels. I mean, from the sheer fact that, and I would think a lot of places, if your employee abuses another employee, automatic firing, let alone, previous misconduct and things like that. His claims that he knew nothing, yet he's super involved. Like, he bought the team after the president was already there, or the CEO was already there when he bought the team. He didn't do investigations into the team before he shelled over however much money to buy it. I don't know. There's just, I want
to read the quote that he had about the Mavs.com writer. It was bad, but we made a mistake about the whole thing and didn't pursue what happened with the police after the fact. So we got it mostly from Earl's perspective, and because we didn't dig in with the details, and obviously it was a horrible mistake in hindsight, we kind of, want to say took his word for it, but we didn't see all the gruesome details until most recently. He also didn't fire Snead because he would go out there and get hired again and do it somewhere else. Mike, I gotta ask, is not action and the efforts to make sure you control future action, was that his attempt to be commended? I'm not sure what Mr. Keevan's point here was.
I mean, that's a new one for me. But didn't he also claim that he said something that directly contradicted this point in another quote, but
I don't know, because the end of the quote is, that's what I was truly afraid of, and that was the discussion we had internally. It was a choice between just firing him and making sure that we had control of him.
What is that conversation like, and how do you control him? I mean, what is this high-level executive meeting on? Well, we should probably keep him around for the greater good. We don't want him getting out there and abusing other people, even though he's been out there abusing other people. Like, what the hell?
We're not going to turn the murderer in because we're not going to fire the murderer because he could murder anyone. Here, at least we can keep an eye on his murdering ass. Like, what?
Right. We'll call his murdering behavior by only letting him murder people here.
Yeah. I mean, the murderer you can see. Am I right? All right. It just seems like it's a culture, like, and it's one of those things that I know you and I talked about this before the show, is you and I had that male privilege to where a lot of the news and a lot of the stories we're able to read, absorb, and kind of move on. But this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, so many people are complicit. The head of HR, which, you know, just makes it you have nowhere to turn.
Links in the show notes, but the original Yahoo story is graphic and damning, and I want you to realize that these writers have been on radio repeatedly, loudly saying that there are aspects of this story that they could not share, that were scrubbed from their story, that are more horrific than what's in there.
I mean, it's just systematic, widespread.
And I think that's what the other thing is, people are coming to grips with what systematic actually means. Like, this is not a bug, this is a feature. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how it was designed for this shit. And
yeah,
I don't know, man. It's hard to get your mind around it almost.
How big is this story playing outside of the sports world? I don't really have a frame of reference to see if it's blowing up like a lot of the other Me Too stories, or if it's just kind of existing in the sports realm.
Well, that's interesting, because I think the Yahoo report dropped on Thursday, and I was mostly plugged into sports media and their reactions. Rachel Nichols had a wonderful monologue on her show on ESPN this week. But it's a good question. It'd be interesting to see, because Mark Cuban isn't just Mavs owner. He is star of Shark Tank. He owns the Fight Network, and and he does a lot of things outside of the basketball arena. But he's also one of the more public and visible faces of the NBA. And it's going to be interesting to see how they balance this, because the Mavs aren't a notable team right now. They're 18-30, I believe. And now you're shining a bright light not only on your on-the-court failures with the $600,000 fine, but your institutional collapses, because this story's out, and apparently, I'm afraid more is coming before it's over.
Yeah, and I don't know. I have a hard time believing that the Mavs are the only organization where this is a problem. Just the way things are, you know.
Yeah, and that's right. We'd be foolish to think that, it's just a Mavs problem. Once they solve this Mavs thing, everything will be hunky-dory. No. This is a micro example of a macro problem that I guarantee not only affects the front offices of these sports leagues, it affects everywhere we go. There's an article, not in the Times, but somewhere else, that focused on the blue-collar women who are abused by their bosses but have no one to turn to. They have to keep these jobs. They have no choice. They can't be loud and be fired and hope that they can make a stand. This is something
go
ahead.
One of the articles, they pointed out one of the women, after she had experienced the harassment, I think, from the CEO, decided it wasn't a safe place to work, and she quit. And they point out that she applied for like 250 jobs over 8 months or something before she was able to find another sports gig. So, like,
yeah, these jobs are scarce, particularly for women. You're 100% right. And we've all swallowed shit at jobs, but there's a limit, and I have a limit, and all these women's limit is much further than mine, and I commit to let this survive and thrive in this industry where it's such a slow change. And I know that change is coming, and I'm happy tomorrow's gonna be better than yesterday. But man, we have so far to go.
So far. I don't think we even know.
And that's the thing, is that you and I, being men, can't really grasp it. Like, we can conceptualize it, but we can't really understand what it's like to walk in those shoes in those halls. And that's all I can do is listen and know that these victims aren't making up these things.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's go to football. Nothing bad happens in football, right?
Didn't football season just end?
Football season ended the day the Falcons lost. Andrew Luck.
I'll co-sign that.
He got hurt in 2015. He has not played football since 2016. The year is 2018. Once upon a time, we were all told Andrew Luck was the second coming of something. He was going to replace Peyton Manning in Indianapolis. He was going to continue to lead them to dominate the putrid AFC West, and that he was going to rekindle the rivalry between Indianapolis and New England. Well, things haven't happened quite that way. The AFC West not quite as putrid as the Texans have found a quarterback, the Jaguars have found a defense, and the Titans, well, they're not all fixed. The Titans are still the Titans. Andrew Luck hasn't been able to find his way onto the field, like we said, for 2 years because of an injury that was mishandled and misdiagnosed by his team doctors in 2015. And the franchise around him looks like just the crumbling remains of Rome, while Jim Irsay decides to pill his way through the rest of his life. So the question now is Andrew Luck back to give us a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, he could be back for next year? Because remind you, they only announced he wasn't going to play last year in week 8. During the preseason, they told you, the rehab's coming along nicely, should be back by midseason. And it became a week later every week until eventually they were like, yeah, not so much. His quote this week did not inspire confidence. Yeah, so I'm in the middle of a sort of little bit of throwing, but strengthening and preparing my shoulder to be able to handle the throw load that is being part of being an NFL quarterback. He's sort of throwing a little bit. That was a statement they given during a Colts town hall meeting on Tuesday night. He had the surgery.
Wait, but he wasn't there. It was pre-recorded for him, right?
Of course. I would never. Ooh.
Can't answer questions.
So, just to recap, he had surgery in 2017, and the team believes that he made worse because he was playing in pain for so long. And now he's 28. He spent 6 weeks last year in the Netherlands. What up, Kobe? Because athletes often go to Europe and get treatments that aren't FDA approved. He's now in California, not working out with the Colts, but with quarterback gurus trying to get back his arm strength and endurance. The doctors have admitted he'll have to throw through pain in the spring and summer to get back into possible playing shape. Andrew Luck says that there will be no second surgery. That ship has sailed. Mike, did anything I described to you send any sort of faith that maybe, just maybe, Andrew Luck takes a snap next year?
Not really. And I also want to tie this back to our earlier conversation about Kawhi. This is the shit he's exactly trying to avoid. So, I don't blame him.
You don't blame him because you're a Kawhi stan.
Yes, that's also true.
As long as you can admit it. But this is ridiculous. Like, this franchise has ruined here's what's even crazier. Think about the top of that draft. Andrew Luck, RG3.
Yeah.
Remember the debates?
Yes, I do. Since I live in Washington as well.
Oh, God, yes. You saw it all happen firsthand. Ground zero. The Washington racial slurs and the mistreatment of young Bobby Griffin. Also, because, like you said, like I was just talking about, the debates about RG3, Andrew Luck, they look stupid now, but of course we don't learn from our past, and so we're having stupid debates now about the fates of these quarterbacks that are headed to the NFL draft. There will be draft coverage on this podcast. We're not going to dive too deep today. Not that I don't do it for a living. It's a lot more fun to cover. But I do want to talk about this. Bill Polian, who is old and very white, and whose son was an assistant at Columbia for a while. I was there. Dennis. Hi, Dennis. He's a nice man. I've never had a bad dealing with Mr. Polian. I do think it might be time for him to hang up the opinions of Bill Polian. He has this week been on some sort of, I don't even know, tear, trying to tell us that Lamar Jackson isn't going to be a quarterback in the NFL. Lamar Jackson is more suited to be a receiver. And not for all those racist reasons that people have said in the past.
Of course not. Of course not.
Not for those reasons. What reasons? Well, because he's got small hands. Because he's too short to play quarterback. Lamar Jackson being 6'3".
So short. So short.
And people have now remembered that once upon a time, Bill Polian said that Johnny Manziel was magic. If you're in the Brown draft room, you owed to fans taking him at number 4. 2 years later, he was quoted as saying, Cleveland got what they deserved for drafting Manziel with all the problems he had. It's February. It's All-Star Week. Sports are slow. People are going to say, hey, let's all dunk on Bill Polian by seeing what he wants to say about these sports. But, yeah, at a certain point, you got to dunk on Bill Polian. That's some bad opinion shit.
And yet, here I am unsurprised. I feel like I'm kind of numb to these opinions about black quarterbacks.
It's the best one that you can see the quotes be the same for Cam as they were for Lamar Jackson. You're like, wait a second, you copied and pasted that.
Yeah, I mean, if you pulled out quotes and did not attribute them to specific quarterbacks, you wouldn't even know.
The only times, if you search out the words quarterback and smart enough to read a defense, the only times they say that is about black quarterbacks and Jacob Eason. I did a Google search, and that was the only white guy who popped with Jacob Eason, which I was like, huh, interesting. Here are the kind of idiot things that are being written now. Louisville does not have a very complex offense. Quarterbacks who come from those type of offenses often struggle when they get into the league. That's why the classroom portion of our private workout be so important. Following that well-spent time, each club will have a strong understanding of whether it thinks Jackson is what it takes to be a successful quarterback in the NFL.
Are these NFL writers or are these Twitter opinions?
Oh, that was an NFL writer.
Ugh.
But I want to make sure I don't want you to believe me, because you say, D-Palm, you're a guy on a podcast. What do you know about college football or football in general? And I wouldn't point to the years I was a talent evaluator and scout, whatever. I'll just quote NFL people who actually know what they're talking about. Mark Innes said, I believe this will become as a shock to any quarterback who's ever played for Bobby Petrino. Chris Brown, who writes the Smart Football book, which is my Bible every year. Petrino literally runs an NFL offensive passing game, and this writer should know better. Jackson is not above criticism by any stretch, but some of these are just odd. It's bad take season, and we're here, and it's going to happen, but it doesn't mean I have to like it. It doesn't mean I can't address it, because it's disgusting, and it's predictable. And like you said, I'm not surprised. The Olympics are happening. Winter Olympics, so don't get up in arms. You didn't miss any sprinting. And the U.S. women have defeated Canada for the gold medal in hockey on the 38th anniversary of the Miracle on Ice. That's pretty cool. No?
No, I mean, I think it's amazing because, I mean, they beat Canada on the anniversary, but like a year ago, weren't the U.S. women's hockey threatening to boycott like world championships because of wages?
They did boycott for wage inequality. They got their money. The men's team stood with them. The women got their money, and then they went out there and got gold, beating Canada. And for those who don't know, they haven't beat Canada, I think, in 20 years. Like, this has been one of those things where, I think in Worlds they have, but the Olympics has just been a drought. And not equating with the Miracle on Ice, because those were Russian pros versus American amateurs, but we took down the Reds. That's all I'm saying.
In a shootout, a really stressful shootout.
Oh, it was compelling for me because I watched it after the fact because I knew he won. I imagined in real time,
it was stressful.
Oh,
yeah,
but
yeah.
Besides that, my next question, is anyone really watching these Olympics? I'm getting highlights, I'm getting links, I'm getting stories, but I don't feel like it's the buzz it has been in the past, or maybe I'm just mythologizing the way I used to watch the Olympics. I don't know.
I think it's a combination of things. You know, it's the time difference. You know, I'm getting, news alerts on my phone before I have a chance to actually watch when they televise the event. So, that takes away because I know what the result's going to be. Also, Winter Olympics always has lower viewership, right? Or at least in the U.S. I don't know. They don't have any competition. Networks aren't airing new TV, so they got the airwaves for, I know, at least primetime NBC coverage.
No, I think you're right. I think that I'm probably just not as plugged into these for whatever reason, but yeah, I'm sure people are watching. But I think you're right. All those factors are working against it. But I hope that stories like the women's hockey team gets out there, because you're right, the game's an important story, but I think the better story is them winning that wage equality.
Yeah, I mean, they did the thing.
I want to make something very clear. Do not come for Don Staley unless Don Staley asks for you. Now, I know I joke on here about not liking college basketball. There's something you should all know about me. I really like women's college basketball. I don't know why. I love their Final Four better. I think it's more entertaining. I don't watch WNBA. I don't know what it is. And Dawn Staley's always been, like, for me, like, I love watching her play. I love watching her play in the Olympics. I love watching her play in college. And I'm loving watching her do what she's done as the coach of South Carolina. She's upended women's basketball by turning them into a powerhouse.
Yep.
It was never supposed to happen in South Carolina. UConn, Tennessee, North Carolina, Notre Dame sometimes, Stanford always. Like, those are your powerhouses. Everyone else is playing for, like, 12.
Pretty much.
And Don Staley was like, nah, man, it's not going to be that way. So, for those who don't know, in January, South Carolina played at Mizzou, and on the 28th, the South Carolina players accused Missouri fans of calling them thugs and screaming the N-word at them. Staley is now suing the AD of Mizzou for her reaction to these occurrences, for tortious and defamatory statements that he made following a 20th game, in which he posited that Staley encouraged the behavior of these fans. He said after the game, I'm going to read the quote here, "Unfortunately, I think Coach Staley has promoted that kind of atmosphere, and it's unfortunate she felt she had to do that."
Should not have said that.
Like, why would
didn't he double down later?
Oh, of course he did. 3 days later, he said he's standing by his fans, and that, yeah, it's not good. So,
yeah, well, he's gonna pay that money.
He's gonna pay that money. He's gonna lose this case. He's gonna pay that money, and Mizzou's got to figure out, can you keep this AD?
Should it cost him his job?
Well, okay. But if I'm a black kid coming to Mizzou, or who Mizzou's recruiting, and I look at some of the other things that have happened on that campus, it's not exactly scaring me to go into Missouri.
So really, we shouldn't be surprised by this.
I was never surprised. I just think that it's interesting that, she's took him to court. Like, I'll take you to court over this shit. People will yell that, but Dusty was like, no, I'll actually take him to court.
Hey, a lot of people use this legal mechanism to remedy their issues, and I'm glad she's availing herself of it as well, because why not?
God bless America. In hilarious American news, the NCAA has denied Louisville's appeal to, I guess, their decision about the escort case. And Louisville has been stripped of the 2013 title. For those of you keeping track at home, I want you to keep track of one thing. When we take away a title in the past, we do not take away any funds generated. We do not take away any funds dispersed. We do not void any contracts. We do not renegotiate with any advertisers. It's all still there. So if you look at sanctions and say you can't go to certain things in the future, those are sanctions that matter. 2013, the banner may come down. That money, still pays. Still green, still pays. Now, is this the ending you thought would come for Rick Pitino and the escort saga?
I wasn't really sure what was gonna. Such a mess. Not surprising, though.
I have an even better question. Rick Pitino got a tattoo behind the strength of this championship.
Yeah.
Got the Louisville championship tattoo on his back. Now they fired him and taken away the title. Is there a tattoo that you would regret more?
I think he does not care. I think he's good.
Oh, okay. See, I think And for me, I think Rick Pitino is one of those guys who's very aware of his legacy. So I think that he cares a lot.
That ship has sailed. I mean, he's been problematic for a minute. So, any disillusion about, yeah, sorry, Patino.
Ricky
I mean, I'm sure he'll still be considered a good coach, but that's stat line's going to come down without that championship.
But the events in that restaurant that evening will never be forgotten. So I got a question: are the feds now the enforcement arm of the NCAA?
Apparently, I want to know. I don't understand when they take these cases. Like, what's the decision process? It's always kind of confused me on when they enter into sports and do these investigations.
Well, a lot of it has to do with interstate. Like, the reason they got in originally, from what I understand, was interstate monetary transfers, and then money laundering, because they're using these camps as shell corporations to distribute money to kids from these corporations. And for those of you who don't know what we're talking about, there's a Yahoo report that dropped on Friday. It outlines multiple players getting multiple payments from varied schools and ADs, some of which drove certain coaches to not do their jobs this weekend. Because the heat just might be a bit too hot. Names were named, players were named, schools were named. But it doesn't feel like a lot to me. Does it feel like people are saying it's going to shake the foundation of college basketball? No. Shake the foundation of college basketball once you get the records of the shoe companies and the coaches' contracts. Let's get the real money figured out. Like, here it's like kids getting $4 or $5 grand. Like, I don't give a shit. First of all, I'm team pay the kids. So if anything, know your worth, kids. Get paid more than you did, right?
Exactly. I mean, it didn't really, I guess it's surprising for people to see specific names, but it didn't shake the foundation of anything. I mean, we all knew this. This isn't any more widespread than we all assumed it was.
But you've given more, for me, the biggest thing here is you've given more fuel to the idiot fire that says, see, you shouldn't pay the players. This is what happened. Like, no, this is what happens when you don't pay the players, you idiots. You create a black market that requires them to operate outside the law. Once you change the rules and regulate it, then you can control a little bit more. Then the pushback comes is, well, won't the big schools benefit? Hey, motherfucker, look at who's benefiting now. Like, what are you talking about? It's not a level playing field. And if you think that, cool. Look at those 5 stars that go to Bama and just send them to, I don't know, Temple. Players and teams have consistent, quote-unquote, draft classes or recruiting classes for a reason. They're able to offer more. Now, if we can offer more, is what saying, now we put Xbox on your Xbox in the locker room. It's crazy. No, come to get a check. Pay the players. You want to solve this? If this Yahoo report has ruined college basketball for you, first of all, wow. Second of all, pay the players. Become an advocate.
Pay them.
Because that's how you stop. You don't want an underbelly. You don't want an underhanded, seedy, a black market. Cool. You put it on Front Street. You make it legal. Otherwise, you have people being taken advantage of. You have these shell corporations that attract things like the FBI, and it's not good for business anywhere. Because guess what? We can all say, oh, this is going to weed out college basketball. It's going to kill it. It'll kill college basketball because, again, like I said earlier about a different system, this is not a bug. This is a feature. You make as much money as possible off of unpaid labor, and then if you can make even more money by paying them a little, you do that too.
And this report's not going to stop this from happening.
Yeah, right?
They're just going to do a better job of getting away with it.
Exactly.
Like, how many kids on that list are in the pros right now not giving a shit? Like, they're fine. That's where they want to go.
$20 million contract, and you're going to ask him about $9,000? He doesn't give a shit. And guess what? Some of those things in the Yahoo report were footnoted to be paid back.
Yeah. I mean, they were loans for some of them, right?
Yeah, some of them are unsecured loans. Which, if you have a problem with that, then we could have a long talk about the predatory loan industry in this country. Let's have that conversation. But let's not have it through the faux caring about the quality or integrity of some sort of an amorphous game. These games have no integrity the second you put them on television and rented out ad space on courtside. Sorry. It became a business, and a business that has woefully and predictably underprotected and underprofited the players who actually compete.
Yep.
So if this is the thing, if it takes the coach of Arizona not to come out to his game because he, just a little bit too hot in the kitchen, if that's what it takes for someone to say, maybe, just maybe, we should revisit paying these players, then fuck him. Fuck Sean Murphy. I'm fine. Don't come out. Be sweaty. Because this has got to get talked about. And if the lesson is, and what's wild to me, and I think that I'm kind of nervous about how it's going to turn out, because for me, when Black Lives Matter was loud and in the news and protesting, people said we should have more control of guns because they're killing us in these streets. The NRA's response was, fuck Black Lives Matter, we're with the police. Now the police are like, yeah, actually, maybe there are too many guns. The response and the twist where they've turned on the police so goddamn fast, it's in my head spin. I'm like, well, what if they weren't cowards? I'm like, oh, word? That's what we're doing now? Like, that was amazing. So now I'm wondering if people are so dedicated to this live amateurism, are they just going to turn on the players? Like, I don't know where this goes next.
Yes, of course they are.
And that's the crazy.
I feel like we're already seeing it.
You're right. No, you're right. Like, they're saying these players shouldn't have taken this money. No. They should have been in a position where they had to take this money. They should have been compensated fairly beforehand.
Right.
And if you are on the school as payment or education as payment system, go ahead and unsubscribe from this here podcast. Thanks.
They're scholarships, their payment, Daniel.
It's not real. If I paid you in scholarships, you couldn't keep your lights on.
Nope, couldn't get a meal.
You wouldn't be happy with that shit. You can't eat a scholarship. I mean, you can, but I don't feel it'd be like filling. I don't know. It just seems like a logical, common sense approach. How do you stop illicit payments? You compensate the workforce fairly. Is anything I said inherently wrong? Well, we do want to say special thanks to homie Mike for coming out, taking the time and hanging out with us today, talking a little sports. I think his mic revolted on him, which is funny on a lot of different levels because now I just can't hear him. I could talk about it all day, but I'm not going to do that. Thank you for listening. That was your show. This is your outro. See you next week.